All right, it is 6 o'clock. It looks like we still have some participants joining, but I think we'll get started as the participant number there has begun to slow down. My name is Tom Brinley, and I proudly serve as the superintendent here in the district. And we have some panelists here that I would like to introduce as they appear on my screen. But we have Colleen Moore, our Director of Curriculum and Instruction, joining us. We have Amy Burnsworth, a Board of Ed member. We have Mr. Darren Gaisford, also representing the board. We have Mr. Bill Grau, our board president. We have Bonnie Nobling, our Director of Information Technology. We have Mr. Tim Gracie, who is the Director of Special Education here in the district. And we have Mr. Joseph Ballard, who is the assistant principal in the high school. Unfortunately, Mrs. Wolstenholme, the principal of the high school, is unable to be with us this evening. She is convalescing from a surgical procedure, and I know she wanted to be here, but we certainly wish her a speedy and full recovery. So without any further ado, I certainly thank you all for spending a couple of hours maybe with us here this evening, just to talk about our reopening plan for the 2021 school year. I'm sure we're all in agreement that we wish that this forum was not necessary, but unfortunately it is. So very difficult for all of us, but I certainly want to provide this opportunity to share with you our plans and to field any questions that you might have. So just as far as a kind of a game plan for this evening, we're going to have a PowerPoint presentation where we kind of go over some of the reasons, some of the factors that have contributed to us being in this situation. Then there's a series of questions and answers, slides that have been populated by questions that have been posed to me or to us already. And then there at the bottom of your screen is a Q&A area. You can click on that at some point and submit. You can just type in your questions. Just due to the sheer volume of folks in attendance, it would be very, very difficult for folks to be on screen and verbalizing those questions. So please type them in and we will get to them. Colleen Moore is going to serve as our moderator, because if I tried to do both, I'd probably lose my place here in the slide. So that's what we're hoping to accomplish this evening. And hopefully we'll have a better understanding of what to expect for the start of this school year. So again, thank you for being here with us. I wanted to begin by explaining the impact that Governor Cuomo's announcement that he made on August 7th had on not only our school district, but school districts, the 700 plus school districts throughout New York State. His announcement was that schools may reopen for in-person instruction. As you know, in a previous correspondence, the state had asked us to create a reopening plan that highlighted the three methods upon which we could reopen, whether it be a fully in-person, a hybrid, or a remote instruction. Ultimately, though, the format for which schools reopen has been left up to the discretion of the individual school districts. And as you know, that's a very difficult decision to have been placed responsible for making. And I know I've shared this with you before, but when school district leaders are asked to make decisions that are based on health and safety, as well as decisions that impact, families financially. I'm not exactly sure why that was left up to us, but it was. And needless to say, those were very difficult decisions to make. However, I will explain shortly how we came to that decision because, again, it was informed by many, many different sources. Um, but as you can see below there, um, the complexity of the issue is that some schools are able to reopen in person without any modification at all because of their sheer size. I can tell you that being a school district attached to this particular BOCES is a challenge because there are no other school districts in our BOCES that are of similar size to us, and that makes things difficult. And as such, I had to certainly reach out and network to see how other schools of comparable size were handling this. But right in our own BOCES, though, many districts could not just reopen, and they had to consider whether to open in a hybrid format or even remotely. But either way, all decisions, past, present, future, were made and need to be made with the safety and health of our students and faculty, staff, you all as parents and guardians, and our community as a whole in mind. Again, just a very difficult situation. So in terms of factors that played into the decision to open remotely, I know we've all been living this pandemic even before the school closure. And I can tell you that I myself have really participated in hundreds and hundreds of hours of ongoing and extensive interactions with this list is not even exhaustive, but I want you just to know who played a role in influencing and informing this decision. But certainly the Otsego County Department of Health, many meetings with them, many phone calls. Several of those meetings were collaborative and included representation from the Delaware County and Greene County Departments of Health, as our BOCES have districts in all three of those counties. I also have the pleasure of serving on the Fox Hospital Board, as well as the Hartwood College President's Advisory Panel, along with the mayor of the city of Oneonta and several college officials and hospital officials and local business leaders. Clearly the members of our Oneonta City School District faculty and staff, our Board of Education, our new transportation service provider, Durham, Chartwells, who is our contracted food service provider, your very important and informative parent surveys, school attorneys, almost daily since March 17th, for 1 or more hours, I've participated in Zoom conference with superintendents of the Otsego Northern Catskill BOCES districts. And as I mentioned before, on numerous occasions, I've reached out to superintendents in Central and Western New York State because they were school districts of comparable size to us, just to see what they were doing. But I also reached out to many superintendents in districts who serve college communities, because that was, clearly a factor that was unique to Oneonta in our BOCES. And, I just wanted to see, some of the challenges that they were facing. But I just wanted to share that with you, for the simple fact that, there was a lot of input and information and, listening and reading and learning about the challenges that this pandemic is posing for communities all over New York State. I can tell you that what I learned is that, each and every community is unique. I learned that many will not be informing their families of their specific reopening format, until maybe even this week or next week. I'm not exactly sure why, but that's what was shared with me with many of the districts that I reached out. And of course, I certainly didn't want to do that. I wanted to give you as much time, as possible, to confront the challenges that reopening in a remote format would pose. And I also learned that there are no good choices related to, reopening schools. And each one was fraught with its own challenges and concerns. And but there are many things that I did learn too. But what we still didn't know was that, we really didn't quite, weren't quite able to predict or understand the full impact that, a large influx of college students will have on the collective health of this community. This was clearly a concern for the Otsego County Department of Health. And as such, we made our remote learning announcement as early as possible in an attempt to be mindful, again, of the challenges that this poses for our parents and guardians, our students, our faculty and staff members. And again, nothing was easy. But the other thing that we don't know is relative to asymptomatic cases and the lack of the ability to detect positive cases in our schools. This was somewhat a point of contention between some of the departments of health, because we all know that whether you attend school, public school, or any school really, or you are a faculty or staff member in a school, 2 or 3 weeks into any school year, we're all symptomatic. It's just the way it is when we come back in. And, this was one of the concerns because, as you know, the list of COVID symptoms is long. And, those are things that, those are symptoms that we see in school all the time. And, one representative from a nearby Department of Health said, your nurses, they're just going to be able to know. They're going to be able to know the difference and tell the difference between, someone who has allergies and someone who has COVID, which was very, very concerning because, as you know, that's not the case. Because the guidance tells us that we have to treat anyone who's symptomatic the same way. And that, that created a real area of concern for us. And the other one was the impact of quarantine and contact tracing on a family. If one of the family members is suspected of this illness. Now, this is subject to change. And, depending on, the source that you speak with, one of the things that I took away from a fairly recent meeting was that, let's say, a child is symptomatic, the child goes home as essentially a method of operation. We have to reach out to the Otsego County Department of Health and let them know we're sending someone home with COVID symptoms. At some point, they may begin contact tracing and advise not only that student, but that student's siblings, as well as the possibility of their parents being quarantined. And that was kind of a shock to me. I understand it, but I was thinking to myself that, that has implications that are much more far-reaching than just our school. So those were some things that were pretty interesting to me, at least initially. What we do know, though, is that we're working hard to create a remote learning environment that is engaging. We listened very closely to what you as parents, guardians, and students, and teachers, and administrators, and our board members had shared with us relative to concerns from March to June, which was very important for us because that's how we learn and that's how we grow. But moving forward, and I know that I'll probably mention this, 12 times, you're going to be sick of me saying it, but don't wait if you have a concern. If there's a concern, if something doesn't feel right, if something, you don't feel that your child is getting something that he or she might need, waiting until, we move to hybrid or, hopefully when we get back in full force to say something, please don't do that. Please reach out to your child's teacher, as soon as something doesn't feel right, or you just don't think that I don't know, there's a particular lesson that someone might need help with. You just need to reach out in a timely manner so that kind of support can be provided for you. The other thing that we do know is coming back to the support, we're working to create an environment with built-in supports and opportunities for support for not only our students, but you as parents and guardians and your families. Another thing that we learned and listened and heard you say is that, there needs to be some degree of support, not only relative to academics, but technology, social and emotional health. And the other thing that we do know, even though it's in this, truly unique time that we're living in, we are excited to welcome our students, you all as families, our faculty and staff back for this school year. Even in the remote learning environment to begin with, we're going to try and make it as memorable as possible for our students, not only in the 9-12 environment, but the K-12 environment. This is it's a very difficult situation for all parties involved, and we're going to try and make it as manageable as possible under the circumstances. So September 8th through October 9th, which is the first 5 weeks of our school year. The decision, as you know, is that we are going to open the school year in the remote environment. And what will that look like? It's going to clearly be a more structured approach than March through last June. That was another thing that we listened and heard repeatedly, that you were telling us that your child or your children need some degree of structure, and as such, we are going to provide that. We also heard you say that trying to bounce back between Schoology and Google Classroom was problematic for your child, but it was also problematic for you as parents and guardians. So we heard that, and we took action, and we are going to now be using Schoology as our one and only learning management system. Students will have a daily schedule. We're going to be mindful of screen time concerns. And essentially, we're going to follow the regular schedule, a 9-period schedule, but in a virtual format. And now, if you take that at face value, that's going to sound like your child or your children are going to be online all day long. And that's not necessarily the case. There has to be a degree of flexibility that is built in there. And plus two, we want to be, again, mindful of the fact that, these kids are going to be sitting in front of a screen for considerable amounts of time. So, for example, depending on the lesson and objective, even though that particular period is scheduled for 41 minutes, the lesson itself might be 15, 20, 25 minutes. I mean, it might be all 41 minutes, but it might not. And therefore, that synchronous live session may be shorter than the full period. So, it's going to depend on what is being taught. It's going to depend on the kind of interaction between students and teacher. But that's the game plan for now. The state has made it perfectly clear that school districts need to provide substantial instruction and substantial interaction with teachers. And the way that we are going to do that is to essentially follow our master schedule with built-in flexibility in there. So more to come on that. Attendance will be taken daily, and I don't want that to alarm anyone. Again, flexibility is the name of the game here. There will be occasions when your child may not be able to, get onto a Zoom lesson. So we're really working to create a number of ways in which attendance can be taken. You know, it might be some sort of exit ticket activity that a student completes at the end of a lesson and maybe emails to his or her teacher or communicates via Schoology or something of that nature. Of course, participation in the live Zoom will count as attendance. And student work will be graded. And this was clearly something that we heard from you loud and clear. You know, as more students did not log on to, you know, Zoom lessons March through June, and we would reach out, or I would reach out, you know, many times I heard, you know what, Tom, if this work is not being graded, it's not gonna be the battle royale in my house to try and get my kid to do it. And I understand that completely, but, and I know you understand that this was, you know, this was so, you know, abrupt, this closure. And, you know, not that I want to go back, but because I think I have shared this in a previous letter, but, you know, the day that we learned that we had to close, that March 13th, I attended a meeting with, you know, with police, fire, the colleges, folks from Bassett and Fox, folks from the Otsego County Health Department. We just kind of, you know, went through the overall collective health of the community. At the time, if you recall, there was only one confirmed case of COVID in Delaware County. And when that meeting ended at 2 o'clock, our marching orders basically were, it's business as usual. So left that meeting, came back at a quick staff meeting here with our district office. And at 4:36 p.m., just 2 hours after that, all of the superintendents in Otsego and Schoharie County received an email from their respective departments of health indicating that we needed to close immediately. So, so based on that, and considering the fact that you know, it was so abrupt, it didn't seem fair to grade that particular work, because one of the other things, when this is just me personally, when I called to say, you know, your child doesn't seem to be engaging, and you know what I heard was some people said, you know what, Tom, I am working 6 days a week. You know, my high school student is not going to be able to engage in Zoom lessons every day because my child needs to watch his or her siblings, and that has to take priority. And we completely understand that. So we didn't want kids to be penalized for any reason, and therefore, you know, initially that work wasn't graded. In this particular situation, student work is gonna count. It will be graded. It's going to be new instruction. So anyway, so here's the big question. What if for some reason, again, my child cannot Zoom on any given day? Will his or her attendance or grade be adversely affected? And the answer is no. But this is the caveat. We just need to maintain open communication between you as parents and your child's teacher or your child's building administrator. We know that life happens. We know that there are circumstances that you know, will come up that perhaps you know, perhaps you have three children, 4 children, and they're all trying to share the same bandwidth, and therefore one or more of them might not be able to Zoom at that particular time. Please just reach out to your child's teacher and let him or her know. And as I mentioned before, there are methods upon which we're going to be able to take attendance. So no, this is not an I gotcha thing. This is not us out trying to get anyone. This is us trying to work collaboratively with our families to try and get us through this very difficult time. And I'm sure we can all agree that we all can't wait until this is behind us. So please, you know, again, if something doesn't feel right, whether it's, you know, some grade, assignment, attendance, please reach out to your teacher, your child's teacher, or your building administrator, or me. Thank you, Colleen. We have ordered Wi-Fi hotspots. You know, our most recent parent survey had indicated that there are several families in our community that did struggle with connectivity, and we have purchased Wi-Fi hotspots, and our administrators and Bonnie Nobling in IT services are already working with families who might need these devices. And Chromebook and material distribution schedule is already established and on our website. And you know, we're gonna get back into it. All right, so in the learning environment, as I had mentioned before, the day will be scheduled. There'll be daily live interaction with faculty. You know, there may be an occasion or two when it's not live. We're kind of taking a look at Wednesdays for you know, perhaps a different format, but more to come on that. But your children can expect daily live interaction with faculty. There will be some recorded lessons, so it's they'll be uploaded for not only students who might have missed something during the day, but for you all as well, parents and guardians, that you can access later to support your children. Assignments will be posted for, again, not only our students, but you all as well. So hopefully that'll help. I know a concern was raised about Chromebooks being turned off at 11 p.m. And that is purposeful because, one, we're hoping that your children are not doing schoolwork at 11 p.m. But also, you know, we would rather not have your children, you know, on a Chromebook, you know, playing a game to all hours of the morning. But, you know, that is the reason why that did happen. So aside from that, there will also be non-digital resources. You know, there will still be some paper assignments. They'll play a role in this remote learning environment. Many of you have also asked that, you know, textbooks be handed out as a source of support, and they will be disseminated at our scheduled material distribution dates. So hopefully with a combination of all of those things, our students and you as parents and guardians will have all of the materials that you will need, you know, to make this a meaningful period of instruction. One of the other things that we had heard you say is that there needs to be, we need assistance, and you're absolutely right. And therefore, we're building opportunities for our students and parents to receive academic and technical assistance. At some point here, when it goes live, there's going to be a parent resource area on our website that will contain a bunch of resources for our parents, which will help. We're also creating tutorials on our website to guide folks through some technical challenges that you may have faced in the spring. We're also putting together some parent guardian small group technical support opportunities, maybe in the form of some small group live interaction where we can get together, we can spread ourselves out, physically distance, and you know, tend to any concerns that you might have. If you bring the Chromebook, or if that's the source of concern, you can bring that in and we will work through that. And we're also exploring if and how we may mobilize our students in a virtual way to serve as tutors for our students. We know that we have every year, I don't know if you all know this, but we do, the board approves several students to serve as tutors, and they work with underclassmen. Sometimes they work with their peers, actually, during study halls or lunchtime or after school. So we're trying to see how we can mobilize them in the virtual environment to, you know, to help our students as well. So more to come on all of those things, but again, we're hoping that all of those opportunities and access to help will, you know, again, contribute to making this a more manageable experience than we just experienced. So many of you are asking about athletics, and that is a great question. As you may know, the New York State Public High School Athletic Association essentially serves as the governing body over athletics in the state of New York. They have delayed the start of sports to September 21st, although I hear that the governor may be making some sort of announcement about sports, maybe even tomorrow, but next week if we don't hear anything tomorrow. So we'll have to wait and hear if anything changes. If it doesn't, though, we're hoping that, if athletics are going to run, we're going to try and make these opportunities available for our students. So we can attempt to, make this as normal as possible for them. And you all know as well as anyone that, when kids feel connected to their school, one, it certainly makes them, motivates them to come to school, and it motivates them to do well and just feel connected. So we're going to try and do that with athletics. We are going to try and do that with our clubs. We're exploring ways in which our clubs can run in this remote environment. They might not all be able to because, several have, a physical, hands-on type environment, but we're going to explore that some more. As far as meals, we are going to operate the same as we did March through June. We are going to establish distribution points in some of our schools. We're also going to be delivering meals to a few designated areas around our district. Now, I know that the state has changed things a little bit. We're going to have to try and get a letter out to you all soon. During the closure from March through June, we really did feed anyone that came to pick up food. And the state said that's not happening this year. Meals are going to have to be prepaid and accounted for. So we're going to put all of that information together for you and get that out to you as soon as we possibly can. Today I had a conversation with a local church. They are trying to see what role that they might play in terms of a food pantry. So once we have that information, we will get it out on our website. However, we will be hosting our third and then our fourth regional food bank distribution at the Oneonta Middle School parking lot starting at 10 a.m. on August 31st and then again on September 30th. That has been a really wonderful partnership, and we're going to try and continue to do that as long as the food pantry through the regional food bank will extend that opportunity for us. And BOCES has been a big question, and it's a great question, but they are still trying to iron out some of the challenges that they're facing, of course, with 20 or so districts that the Otsego Northern Catskill BOCES serves. You can imagine if Oneonta and Cooperstown and Skanevis and Worcester and a few of these other schools are remote, and then others might have their K-5 folks attending on a hybrid. They're struggling really to balance all of those schedules. So they're trying to determine what programs will or may open remotely, which ones they may be able to accommodate fully in person, and then those that might be hybrid. So, once we hear more, we'll get that out. But if the BOCES programs are running, we're going to transport Oneonta students to those programs so they don't fall behind in those particular, especially the CTE programs. So this is a big question, and it's a challenging one. But these are some of the factors that we're going to have to consider, as we look to transition to a hybrid model on October 13th. one, the number of students who elect to be taught remotely or who are ill. I'm happy that we have been able to give you families this choice. It was, I don't want to say it was shocking, but in a way it was, to learn that many districts are not giving parents a choice. If they open in hybrid, the expectation is that your child is there. Some districts that are opening fully, the same way. But I certainly didn't want to have that situation here, as you all should have a say in that. And clearly through your last survey, quite a few of you had indicated that your child will be learning remotely at some point here very, very soon. And I know you're all surveyed out, and I understand that. But we will be reaching out again just to confirm those things, just so we can absolutely have concrete numbers as we prepare to transition to hybrid. Another factor that we're going to have to consider is the collective health of our community. Right now, I know there's been a few additional cases over the last couple of days. I know we're starting to see a creeping up of, tests being administered. I know last week there was a day with over 400 tests administered. I think today was another day with over 200 tests. So we'll have to just monitor all of that, and hopefully, the collective health of our community will remain stable. That's one of the things that always alarmed me, that the state was saying one of the things that you should consider when thinking about reopening is the availability of hospital beds in your local community. Now, that's pretty alarming to me. If that's the barometer for schools deciding how to reopen, that's a huge concern. And I'm sure it is for you as well. So another factor is the number of staff members who request to work remotely due to chronic illness or comorbidities, or those who are caring for family members who fall into that classification. I can tell you that we do have folks with underlying conditions that are very, very concerned about returning to the classroom, and rightfully so. Camp X down in Georgia really turned the medical world on its ear, because at the time there seemed to be some degree of understanding about how younger children contract this illness and shed this illness. But to have 200 plus other campers down in Georgia, as well as staff members, contract this illness really was alarming for a number of reasons. So generally, we know that kids with their immune systems being strong tend to fare well through this. The long-term effects, I think, are yet to be seen, but certainly don't want any student to ever be in a situation where he or she thinks that they might have passed this illness along to a teacher, a parent, a sibling, a grandparent. That would be a heavy burden for any child to bear. Another factor would be an order by the Otsego County Department of Health or the New York State Department of Health, our governor. As we progressed March through June, as you know, there were well over 200 executive orders that were issued by the state. So that would certainly be a consideration that we would have to monitor. The other is the ability to test students and receive timely results. The most recent meeting that I was at with healthcare professionals and the Department of Health, they were sharing that their concern is, and it's not across the board, but on average, it's taking somewhere in the area of 5 to 10 days for test results to come back. And they were citing the major concern that many reagents used for conducting these tests are being funneled elsewhere. Therefore, many of the specimens collected here are heading up to the Wadsworth lab, and they are overburdened. And as such, they're freezing many samples So it is taking a bit of time to get those results back. Not all the time. There are some places you can get results back in 2 days. But at some point their testing capability is going to be challenged as well. So another thing that we will keep an eye on. And as I mentioned before about BOCES, you know, we will need to monitor the closure of other schools and programs that we send our kids to, especially BOCES. They're really struggling with, you know, how they can balance all of the needs of the assorted districts at this point. We need to monitor the ability for us to acquire cleaning products and personal protective equipment and other supplies necessary. You know, not all that long ago, it was I don't know if it was mandated or not, I think it was, that hospitals need to carry 60 days worth supply of personal protective equipment. As you can imagine, our ability to acquire such things at that point decreased dramatically. So we're going to have to monitor that. We have thousands of masks on hand. We have 1,000 shields, face shields. We have a considerable quantity of cleaning product. So as of right now, our supply is healthy. But when, and I don't know if you did or not, but if you had a chance to review that 145-page guidance from the state, if you looked at the personal protective equipment formula that the state put on there, a district of our size, it was recommended that we stock 990,000 face masks. I can tell you that we have nowhere near that many right now. And that's why, you know, in my most recent correspondence to you, which was the framework, we're asking that you please, you know, provide your child or your children with 2 appropriate face masks, whether they be of the cloth variety or surgical masks, just something that covers the nose and mouth. And we'll touch on that in just a little bit. Again, the ability to acquire adequate food supplies from our vendors. We were lucky March through June that you know, our food vendors working through Chartwell's, you know, that supply chain continued to be strong. So we are fortunate in that regard. But this last one is a concern, and it's our ability to acquire substitute teachers as well as bus drivers. You know, as you can imagine, you know, many of our substitute teachers as well as our bus drivers, many of them are retired folks. We have polled most of our substitute teachers, and we clearly don't have the substitute pool that we have enjoyed in years past. So that becomes problematic in a scenario like this. For example, when we go back to when we transition to hybrid, let's say I'm a teacher and I have an underlying condition that I've gotten a doctor's note for, requesting the accommodation of working remotely from home. So I remote in for my class periods during the day, and my students are going to be watching me, you know, online from the classroom. Now, without an adult monitoring that classroom, it's an adult-less or teacher-less classroom, and we can't have that. So, you know, depending on what that number is in terms of folks who do seek that accommodation to work remotely from home, once we open in a hybrid format, you know, we're going to have to see if we can even provide the supervision and monitoring of classrooms to, you know, to open in a hybrid format. So as you can see, and this list again is not exhaustive, but there's a lot of plates in the air when we're talking about, you know, reopening our buildings. And I hope that none of these factors are negative in any way, and that, you know, we can get our folks back into our brick and mortar buildings and at some point transition quickly and welcome all of our students back in a fully opened environment. Look, we're as anxious to get our folks back into their buildings as I hope you are. We are just finishing up a very extensive building project. Of course, it was the one that delayed our opening last year by 2 days, but it is really coming along, and we want our students and our teachers and our families to enjoy that project that has been supported by our taxpayers in the district. So we're anxious for that. Thank you, Colleen. Special education, how are students with disabilities being provided their services? And at some point, because this type of interaction is super important, but at some point you're going to be contacted by your child's teacher or a therapist who works with your child. And the purpose of that really is to listen to any concerns that you or your child experienced during the closure. There may be goals that were developed that need to be updated or revisited once they're mastered. But during this discussion, the person that is reaching out to you will also be inquiring about your preference relative to how these services will be implemented. And all the scenarios will be considered. So we want this to be a collaborative partnership, as we always do, between home and school, so that the product that we provide for your children is a meaningful one, and one that is working well for your child and you as a family. So during that first 5 weeks in the remote learning, teachers will provide you with consistent times that they will be available to provide services. But again, your input is essential in how they'll be delivered. So please look forward to hearing from your child's teacher or therapist. And if for some reason you don't get contacted, please reach out. Just to continue on here, our goal for self-contained classes will be to limit exposure, and students' mainstreaming opportunities may be modified when in-person classes resume. Resource room and consultant teacher services will be scheduled and implemented similar to how they are during the regular school year. And providers will discuss detail when they reach out to you in early September. As we determine how many students with disabilities are returning to school, more details will follow regarding the weekly schedule. More information about students who attend a full day BOCES program will be available soon. And parents will be contacted shortly after we have, the information that we need from BOCES. But again, please, Mr. Gracie has certainly extended this as well. Please contact the special education office or your respective building principal with questions that are unique to your child. And they will gladly help you and answer your questions. So what will a hybrid model look like? Some details still need to be finalized, but in order for us to maintain physical distancing in the classrooms, we had to divide our students. Our parent survey made that very, very clear for us, which I'm thankful for. On average in the district, our classrooms run roughly 730 square feet, and those are the square footage that those classrooms were designed for. When you mix in there a teacher's desk, a bookshelf, a round table for some small group learning, of course the square footage decreases. So on average, when you consider the size of a classroom, we're talking roughly 8 to 12 students to do this right in a particular classroom. There are a couple of classrooms in our district that are, in the 800 or 900 square foot variety. They are generally our, our kindergarten or first grade classrooms, but on average, they're around 730 square feet. So what we've done, one group is going to attend on Monday and Tuesday. They will engage in remote learning on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Our second group will attend on Thursday and Friday and receive remote learning on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. Group 3 is essentially, our special education students, and we have to talk through this a little bit more. There might be occasions for our special education students or maybe our English language learners that may require a bit more of in-person opportunities. So we need to work through that a little bit. And group 4 are those students with underlying health conditions, as well as those whose family really are just not comfortable with them returning to school during this health emergency. So those folks are in remote learning, and they will remain in remote learning, until, families feel comfortable with them returning to the classroom. In addition, as soon as we work through the details relative to what hybrid group your child will be assigned, we're going to reach out to you as quickly as possible. Again, going back to what I had mentioned just a few minutes ago about an additional survey, we just need to conduct confirmations now to accurately determine who is going to who's going to be seeking an opportunity for in-person hybrid instruction. And with our most recent survey too, there's about almost a quarter of our families did not respond. So we are going to be reaching out to them personally just to confirm their plans for the coming few weeks of school. So once we have those in place, we're going to be able to, as best we can, level load those students into hybrid groups so that we can maintain the adequate physical distancing in our classrooms. So this is going to be a couple of weeks, but by late August, we should have that information out there, or even early September. And of course, that's for a projected in-person hybrid date of October 13th. So, we're going to try and get that information to you as quickly as possible, but we're not going to rush it because we want to be as accurate as possible and make sure that we get that right. Transportation. Again, in our most recent survey, I truly appreciate the exceptionally large percentage of parents who said that they feel more comfortable transporting their child or children during this situation. And as you know, we've had to reduce ridership on our buses. And to do that, many districts have expanded the walking range to reduce ridership, but we would rather not do that. And as such, we simply asked for those of you that can and will to please consider transporting your children to and from school so that we can run our buses the best we can under the circumstances. Those that have to take the bus, those students are going to be placed one to a seat unless there are 2, 3 members from the same household, and of course they can sit right next to each other. Everyone on the bus is going to need to keep their masks on and wear a mask. And with the high backed seats that all of our buses have, they present a fairly substantial barrier between students. It's actually a little thicker than the Lexane or plexiglass partitions that many folks are using. So that is our plan as it is right now in terms of transportation. Now, again, if you've had the opportunity to take a look at that reopening framework that we posted, you'll find this in there. Prior to that guidance coming out, we as a district went and purchased 8 digital thermal scanners. And it was interesting, each scan takes 5 seconds, and, trying to figure out how long it will take to get, 500 kids into the high school at 5 seconds at a pop. And, it was concerning that, if that did fall on us and we were in a situation where we were fully opened and still had to take temperatures, we're talking around 40 minutes to get everyone into the building. Then, of course, the state guidance came out. And don't worry, that was a good investment. Those digital thermometers will certainly be handy, especially when or if we're allowed to run, some athletic events or some events in in-person events in the high school or in the middle school or wherever. But then the state guidance came out and said, health screenings should actually be taking place prior to students leaving their residence. So as you can see here, we are working to acquire Parent Square. It's an app, and it essentially is going to be one of the tools that our parents and guardians can use to affirm that the screening has taken place prior to, having your child drive to school or walk to school or hop on a bus, or you drive them to school. And that will come into our schools, and we will know that your children are healthy for the day. But there'll also be a non-tech option as well, which will essentially be a paper screening that your child will just have to bring with him or her to school, wherein you attest to the fact that your child does not have a fever of 100 degrees. And, if your child answers no during the screening to those 4 bullet points, please, send them on their way to school. However, if the answer is yes to any one of those answers or questions, no member of your household is able to attend school on that day. And before returning to school, all the students in your household must have documentation from a healthcare provider evaluation and a negative COVID-19 test and symptom resolution, and hopefully not ever, but if a positive COVID-19 diagnosis, then a release from isolation for those children to return to school. Now that can change as well, because we've, some of the most recent meetings that I've attended, this particular protocol has been questioned a little bit, but that's where it stands right now. So if that does change, we will communicate that to you as well. And that's only pertaining to, a return to school after being symptomatic or after a positive COVID-19 screening. But that is the partnership that we are really relying on with you all to, just please make sure that your children are feeling healthy and don't have a fever, and they're not symptomatic prior to sending them into the buildings. It's really just the one way that we can protect each other along with their masks. So we certainly appreciate your assistance with all of that. So what happens if your child is symptomatic at school? We are going to be creating, Colleen, if you could just bump ahead one. Thank you so much. We are creating isolation rooms, just if, whether it's a student or a staff member is feeling symptomatic, we will get them to the isolation room. School nurse will assess the student or even the staff member and evaluate whether or not those symptoms are consistent with COVID-19. Unfortunately, right now, that list is lengthy. If the symptoms are consistent with COVID, school nurse will notify the main office, the student and all members of their household, or if it's a staff member, will be required to either be picked up by his or her parent or guardian. Staff members will obviously be able to drive home. And if you need, we will provide you with information on healthcare and testing resources in the community if you do need so. Before returning to school, again, this is something that might change, but again, this is where we are right now in terms of a return to school protocol. So, and I will certainly update you if that changes in the near future. So when we are back in the buildings, students and staff and faculty are going to wear masks and be physically distanced in our classrooms. We're trying to do everything that we can to keep each other safe and, But we know that masks are often uncomfortable, and we are going to, certainly speak with our faculty members so that they can build in some mask breaks throughout the day. So again, students and staff will wear masks in the hallways as well. Lunch, as I mentioned previously, but lunches will be pre-ordered and prepared and provided in areas that, wherein we can try to maintain physical distance for all involved. So students might not, of course, in the high school, we have the open lunch policy anyway, but that is not going to be in effect during this emergency period. And I know that's going to be difficult for some, but you have to imagine how difficult it's going to be for us with students leaving for lunch, having to come back and be assessed again. So that's something that we are going to discontinue temporarily, just to try and maintain the safety of all involved. And not that it's applicable, as this presentation was used for the K-5 environment and the 6 through 8. So not much to mention about recess, but in terms of physical education, in terms of instrumental music, choral music, those classrooms, those students, based on the guidance from the state, those students are going to have to be physically distanced by 12 feet. So we're going to, it's going to be different, but we're certainly going to try and make it again as meaningful and normal as possible under the circumstances. So these are a series of questions that have been posed prior to the presentation, and hopefully these will answer some of the questions that you might have. Excuse me. So will transportation to BOCES be provided? And the answer is yes. And as I mentioned, we're just waiting the specifics regarding their programming. But if they're running and you as parents and your students feel comfortable attending, we're going to get the students there. Are there specs or specification on face masks? There are. An appropriate face mask is one in which both the mouth and the nose are covered at the same time. Most recently, the gator style face masks, as well as bandanas, and those masks with valves were deemed to be not as effective and should not be used in school. We've also learned that polyester face masks hold moisture, which could be problematic if they're not cleaned frequently, and that may be uncomfortable. So really, we're looking for either cloth style masks, whether it be preferably cotton, or the surgical style masks that can cover the nose and mouth at the same time. Question: if the governor's reopening metrics are met as we approach October, will we reopen? Well, I guess the answer would be maybe. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of factors that need to be considered well outside of the 5 to 9% range established by the governor. As you can imagine, if this county is in the 5% range, that's really going to be problematic for our Department of Health. They have limited resources as they are, with only 6 folks working in that department right now. So that could create a real challenge. So the best that I can do right now is to say maybe, but there are a lot of factors that will be considered in that. And of course, our goal is to return students to in-person instruction as quickly as possible, provided that it is safe to do so. And I, along with you, are hoping that we can do that sooner rather than later. Okay. The question was posed to me: why weren't parents given the option to decide how schools open? That's a very difficult question to answer, but I hope based on some of the things that I shared with you earlier, there were many perspectives from all sorts of different stakeholder groups that were absolutely considered in these decisions. Your parent surveys, the parent question and answer forum that we put out there for a while, those were incredibly important and informative to me. And I thank you now for taking the time to get on there and pose those questions and answer those surveys for us. You really gave us a clear idea of, where you stood as a community in terms of reopening. But you have to understand that, whether we're learning remotely, those students that are learning remotely, those that are going to be teaching from the remote learning environment, teacher union considerations, the availability subs, all of those factors that I had mentioned previously, including the ability of our local health department to, contact trace and all of those things. Those are all factors that will be monitored closely every day. Even now, those conversations are taking place, but they will continue as we progress forward. And any decision that is made is going to be made, in the best interest of the health and safety of all of our community stakeholders. Don't think for one second that you didn't contribute to this decision, because you did. And including, all of the feedback that was gleaned from, even our parent question and answer. It wasn't just questions and answers that you had presented. It was also comments, and they were important. So I certainly appreciate that. Will teachers be required to be in the buildings in September? We talked about this just a little bit ago, but no, they won't be required. There's going to be folks who already we have received some doctor's notes containing a medical opinion that some particular folks, due to some underlying health conditions, are clearly at an increased risk of contracting COVID-19. Some of our folks care for not only some children, but some of their adults who also fall into that vulnerable classification. So no, they won't be required to be in our buildings. Obviously, when we go back to hybrid, those with those medical notes, as we mentioned before, may still be teaching remotely from home. So that is, that is something that we're going to have to deal with and monitor as we move along. How will specials be taught? Daily schedules based on developmental levels are being discussed, but we're not looking to reduce any of our course offerings at this time, because eventually we are going to be back in our buildings, and we want to make that transition as simple as possible for all involved. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we're sticking to following our master schedule just virtually. So hopefully when that transition takes place, it will be as seamless as possible. Will there be a parent night or orientation for incoming freshmen? Yes, absolutely. Many of your children might very well be Link Crew leaders, or many of your children might be incoming freshmen. But either way, on Friday, August 28th at 1 p.m., every Link Crew leader is going to be conducting a Zoom meeting with his or her Link Crew students. And, I've heard some bits and pieces from Mrs. Lutzik, who is the Link Crew advisor. And it seems like even in the remote or the Zoom environment, that sounds like that's going to be a pretty neat time there at 1 p.m. on the 28th. So yes, as far as resources throughout the year, those Link Crew leaders will serve as upper class mentors and a resource for our incoming freshmen, and be a good opportunity for someone who's coming into the building to say, you know what, I know that kid, and that kid's a junior, or that kid's a senior, and someone that they can, look to for answers and, help guide some of their decisions a little bit. All right, if the decision is made to reopen in October, will we see a 5-day per week back to school schedule? Now that transition plan has already been established. It's in the framework that I provided for you. That was 2 weeks ago. I'm not even exactly sure now. But as long as the state imposes the physical distancing stipulations, we're going to have to remain in the hybrid until those are until that is changed, because again, we simply can't accommodate all of the students in our classes based on those physical distancing stipulations. So we're going to remain in hybrid until when we come back, when we transition to hybrid. We're going to remain there until the state releases that stipulation. But that's all contained in that framework that I had shared with you. Many folks, many school districts submitted their framework where they spelled out those 3 options, but kind of left them ambiguous. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to be as specific as possible and share with you our reopening plan. Again, to give you as much time as possible to help you all with any arrangements that you need to make for your children. What will a school day look like? I kind of alluded to this a little while ago, but generally our students are going to follow their daily schedule. We have had the luxury, we're very fortunate. We have great faculty and staff here in the district, and they have attended several meetings where we talked through some stuff, but historically, schedules and information for your students go out about this time, and they are going to continue to do that. So schedules are either going to be mailed relatively soon or presented to your children during the scheduled material pickup date. Because there are a couple more things that we need to iron out. Are all teachers required to Zoom with the students? As many at the end of the last year did not. New York State, as I mentioned before, is requiring substantial teacher interaction and substantial instruction. And as you know, as I mentioned before, during our March through June closure, students and teachers alike encountered connectivity issues. And that played into a number of things that we've tried to improve upon during this time. But as I mentioned, we're following our 9-period master schedule just in the virtual environment. And that's why I say it again, if you as parents do not feel that a substantial degree of interaction is taking place, please reach out to your child's teacher. And I encourage you to, and I'm going to tell our teachers that that I have shared with our parents that, and a student, if you don't feel that that's taking place, I want you to reach out to your child's teacher or your child's teachers. And if you feel that you're not satisfied with that answer, reach out to Mr. Ballard or Mrs. Wolstenholme. Ultimately, you can always reach out to me as well. So, will Regents exams take place in January and June? No official word on this yet from the state. I know they're working on it. I was reading something that was released from the state today. Once that information comes out, I will get that out as quickly as possible. How will OHS facilitate the college process? Our school counselors are going to communicate virtually with their respective students. So I'm hoping that, with regard to that process, we won't skip a beat. You can imagine March to June was an incredibly, busy time for our graduating seniors, trying to get all of their college-related things together. Happy to report that for the most part, that went relatively well. So I would expect the same in this reopening format. So our school counselors will definitely be talking to their students. Okay, I have a child that is usually a great student. He's refusing to participate in a Zoom. What can I do? Again, this comes back to us being good partners as we always are. But, please reach out to your child's teacher and talk through this a little bit. Maybe, I know as a father of three that, if I say something to, one of my children, it's this way. If my wife says something, it's a different way. But you know what? If one of his or her teachers says something, man, it takes on a different meaning. So, maybe it's as simple as your child's teacher reaching out to them, or, maybe it's even another peer. So there are options there. But, again, if we don't know that there's a concern, it will be difficult for us to try and address that and work through that together with you all. Which learning management system will be utilized? Again, Schoology. The kids will utilize Schoology for their classwork. Does this system allow for video conferencing, or will they use Zoom to meet with teachers and as a class? The district purchased Zoom Pro licenses, and teachers will be using that platform to Zoom with their students. Will this daily schedule be mindful of working parent schedules? Absolutely. Again, going back to that 9-period schedule, again, we understand the challenges that many of our students, many of our parents will face in this environment, and the flexibility that I had described previously is certainly a consideration that we hope will be factored in and help again make this as manageable as possible. So on paper it looks like a straightforward day, but again, there's flexibility built in, and the resources that I described previously for our families and our students hopefully will help in many ways. If there is a vaccine available, will you require all students to get it? Will you then open schools in person full time? As you can imagine, any such vaccination requirements will be determined by the state of New York. So I guess more to come on that. That was another thing the state threw at schools, making us the vaccine police, which was problematic because, here we are then in the gap, trying to, enforce something that the state thrust upon us. So we will see what happens here. What are the requirements for PE? Physical education requirements as stipulated by the state have not changed at all. However, how that takes place, especially in the hybrid environment, those students will be spaced out 12 feet between them. I would imagine that weather permitting, many physical education classes may take place outside, so we'll have to see. How often will you reevaluate the hybrid model of learning? Will you set a time frame for every month, every 5 weeks? And I mentioned this before too, but as long as there is a state stipulated physical distancing guideline, we're gonna have to remain in that hybrid format. So, we're gonna be there until the state says we don't have to be there anymore, or the Department of Health says that, or the CDC, that we don't need to be there anymore. And hopefully, again, that'll be sooner rather than later. How can students volunteer to be a mentor to underclassmen for academic classes? Great question. As I mentioned a little while ago about, access for our students and our parents, we're hoping to mobilize those kids and get them approved as tutors. And then we're gonna need to figure out the mechanism for how folks can reach out to them. So we're gonna work through that for sure. Can one cohort just be seniors? Unfortunately not. Believe it or not, we had looked at this because it was something that we certainly wanted to consider. But unfortunately, many of our classes are not grade specific. Some of our classes, have students, that could very well be 9 through 12. And from a physical distancing perspective, if all the seniors were attending on Monday and Tuesday, we would not have the staffing, excuse me, to accommodate that. I will share with you that, one of the superintendents that I was talking to from Central New York State, because they are comparable size to us, and they have a real good network, the Onondaga and Cortland areas. So I was asking about, how they're going to reopen. And he was very proud to say, this is what we came up with. And we are going to, spread our students out. We're going to utilize this additional space and that additional space. And we're going to divide our kids up. And I said, wow, that's really neat. So you're going to have, 6 through 8 attend, this day, and 9 through 12 attend this day. So you can separate them. So who's watching when you divide those grades in half, class by class? What faculty or staff members are watching the second half of the kids? And of course, he was confused by that question. And I said, if you take a 6th grade class and half of those kids remain in the classroom they're assigned, and you relocate the second half of kids to the library, who's watching or monitoring the second half of that second group of kids? And I said, is it the library media specialist? Is it? And he looked at me and he said, you know what? I don't know the answer to that. That we don't have the staffing to do that. This is a terrible plan. And I said, well, go tell the other superintendents in your group that you need to come up with something else, and let me know when you do, because maybe it's something that we can employ here. And unfortunately, I never heard from that superintendent again. So, however, I did go online not all that long ago, and several of the schools that he works with are opening remotely as well. So the same principle applied with our seniors. If we take a 12th grade English elective, with 22 kids in it, and they show up on a Monday and a Tuesday, and we can only accommodate, let's say half of those kids in the classroom, the other half is going to go somewhere, and someone's going to have to teach them, in that other setting, and I would be hard pressed to find any school that can accommodate that. So unfortunately, we have considered this, but it's just not going to work in this model. How will students send in their homework assignments and take tests and be graded? Most of these specifics will come directly from our teachers or our building administrators. Still a little work to be done on that. Will you allow the windows in the classrooms to be open when they are in school for ventilation, temperature permitting? Absolutely. Windows are always allowed to be opened. We're going to encourage our students to bring an extra layer with them to class. It's just like our buses. Our buses with temperatures above 45 degrees, we're going to ask that some of their windows be cracked open a little bit, and the hatches on the top of the bus be opened to promote ventilation. So we're going to encourage windows in our classrooms to be open too, just to get some cross breezes through there, and encourage folks to bring an extra layer so they can put it on if they get chilly in the classroom. What about senior events? Our hope is that whenever allowed, we're going to encourage and support those things that are special and memorable for our seniors. That's our hope. That's our plan. We're going to try and create those opportunities whenever we can. As you know, even right now in New York State, we're not allowed to have congregations over 50 people. So that may change at some point, but as soon as we get the green light to do those things, we're gonna try and make those work. And we will make them work. We're not gonna try, we're gonna make them work. All right, so Colleen, I know you're the moderator, and I know I see a few questions in there. Colleen, I think you're muted.
You got to have that every time we Zoom. One person. It was me tonight. Okay, good. Many answered questions in the question and answer. So if you did ask a question, some of them have already been answered. So you can go ahead and check those out. Will kids be prepared to take the Regents exams without in-person learning?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, again, we're going to try and look. You can never replicate, uh, in-person education in, the remote learning environment. But there are certainly, uh, we're certainly going to, make it as close as possible. So yeah, I mean, if regents are running, and I'm not entirely sure. It's going to be interesting to see, um, how things go in the state. But it will be interesting to see if there are regents exams this year. But if there are, and we're going to prepare as if there are until we're told that they're not, our students will be prepared.
How do you access the 145-page handbook about COVID that you mentioned?
I'm guessing it's a state guidance. Now, somewhere on our banner, on our webpage, we have linked to that.
Okay.
So we'll see. But if it's not, we'll put it on there again. But I believe in one of the correspondence to you all, I actually included that link.
Yes, we'll make sure that it's prominent there.
Okay.
If the students start hybrid and don't feel comfortable, can they change their mind and go remote?
Absolutely. And that's a transition that is a little bit easier for us. Students who are in the remote environment and then want to come back to the in-person environment, it's a little more challenging for us just because we have to maintain the physical distancing stipulations. But yes, we will work it out. But if your child is coming to the hybrid and does not feel comfortable, and this has been a question that has been asked many, many times. The answer is absolutely we can change. And I get it because I'm no good at this. But, with all of this construction that we have been undergoing over the last 3 years, when I go up to the high school or the middle school and, stop in to check on something, the contractors that are there, they have their mask on, but it's just a normal thing to extend their hand, to shake your hand. And I'm never good about that. I just shake their hand. And for the next few minutes, I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, did I just give myself COVID? And I've heard kids telling me the same thing, like, Mr. B, if I'm in a class, even though we're wearing masks and, Johnny, who's 6 feet away from me, sneezes, I'm not going to hear what the teacher says for like the next 7 minutes because I'm going to be thinking, did some sort of COVID germ just get on me? So, under those circumstances, there may be kids that, that is a fear that they might have. And I understand it, and we will accommodate the best we can. If transitioning from that environment to the remote environment is something that, your child feels more comfortable with, then we will accommodate that and make that happen.
Okay. Will the district be able to help families cover the cost of testing if they need it, since the testing is being mandated?
Unfortunately, no. And this was actually a discussion today we had with the Department of Health and Otsego County itself. But unfortunately, no.
Do the teachers have a deadline to ask for an accommodation so you know how many will be teaching in person versus not?
I mean, I think we've heard from, many folks at this point, but the unfortunate reality is that this is a fluid situation. I can tell you that there's a couple of folks that, are still going through a few things that, they're awaiting some direction from their doctors to help them. So, yeah, I mean, they're not so much a deadline, but, folks have been very, very good. I sent out a correspondence to them all, I want to say 2 weeks ago, had some immediate responses from folks. And we have seen some of those letters coming in. We've also seen folks say, you know what, Tom, I do have one of those underlying conditions, but things are well controlled and my doctor feels that my doctor is comfortable with me returning to the school environment. So.
Okay. I think you talked about this a little bit, but maybe just some clarification needed. When school starts remotely, how do we report as being in attendance? Will there be a certain time to check in, or will attendance be recorded based on completion of the work?
Well, that's a great question, and it's going to be a little combination of both. As I mentioned earlier, obviously, if I'm running the class and I see you, it's very easy for me to take attendance. Someone who's not here, we're going to run attendance like we would on a normal day. So if your child is not attending a Zoom, similar to a normal school day, you'll get a phone call from the from the health office indicating that your child has been marked absent, unexcused for a couple of periods, because you still need to know that. And then, if at all possible, we encourage you to, call the school and just let them know if there is a day when your child will not be attending, so we don't bug you with a phone call.
Okay. Will grading be pass, fail, or letter grade?
It will not be pass, fail. We are going to hit the ground running, and through substantial interaction and substantial instruction, we're comfortable with, keeping our grading scheme as it is. But again, that's our wish. And, we want to make the instruction as meaningful as possible so kids will engage appropriately. And that, at least that's the direction we're heading in.
Would there be an option for my child to just go to school for his science class and lab and do everything else online?
We'd probably have to explore that a little bit. For the simple fact, I guess we would need to review numbers. I mean, that would take a little digging into. I don't want to say no right now, because, there might be a possibility for that. I think if they self-transported, obviously that would make life much easier, but probably something that, you and your child would need to have a discussion with, Mr. Ballard and Mrs. Wolstenholme and your child's teacher.
And I know I put an answer in the chat, or the question and answer earlier, about science labs, and virtual labs are being explored currently by the science teachers, and the state is still making some decisions based on what are going to be required labs. So still more information to come about that. Will SATs and ACTs be offered?
Yes, they are. The September ones, we have postponed those to the October dates. Yeah, we're hoping to offer those, as best we can. We're just trying to explore, some of the larger areas in our buildings that we might be able to spread kids out better and still provide the, the required monitoring for the tests. Those tests are the administration directions for those tests are pretty extensive. So we want to make sure that we can do all of those things in the setting, and we might have to decrease, the number of test takers, just to make sure that we're physically distancing the students in that testing environment. But yeah, our plan, I just recently had this conversation with Mrs. Garcia and Mrs. Siegel from the high school. So yeah, we're hoping that we can, well, we're planning on it. Not hoping, we're planning on offering those.
Are colleges requiring the SATs?
Well, we're starting to see, somewhat of a, I don't want to say it's a backtracking, but, some colleges are definitely, moving to a more holistic application process. Yes, they, some are and some are not. So I think that's more of a college or university specific requirement.
How will advanced placement classes be handled? Is there any possibility for high school students to do work above their grade level?
Yeah, we're, like I mentioned before, we're hoping to offer, no reduction in the courses that we're, that are currently in our, in our course program guide. Recently had a conversation with Mrs. Beagle, who runs an advanced placement course. And she's, very excited about, running the class. So yeah, and even our concurrent enrollment opportunities, our affiliations with several colleges in the area, we're looking to, again, because at some point this is going to be over with. And we want our kids to walk back into our buildings and academically trying, not to skip a beat at all. So yes, those offerings are still going to be available.
Okay, this person was late to the meeting and just wants to know about sports. My son plays outside track. Will they be playing indoors or not at this moment?
I was mentioning that, right now the New York State Public High School Athletic Association has delayed the start of fall sports to September 21st. And I was mentioning that the governor might be making some sort of announcement relative to athletics, either as early as tomorrow or at some point over the next week. So I guess we're going to have to wait and see just a little bit. But if we can offer and have our kids participate in that, we're going to try. Again, just trying to keep things as normal and keep our kids as engaged as possible, which is going to be hard, but we're going to do the very best we can.
Okay, and we just posted in the chat the 145-page document that we were talking about earlier, and we'll also make sure it's it's on our website as well, so you can find it there. One last question. So this seems like a little bit of a struggle, trying to figure out how to get his son through all of the plans he has and are not happening. Going now into junior year, made the baseball team for the first time in a couple of years last year and was so excited. Now football's gone. And, my child really lives for sports. How do I help? How can we do this?
But believe me, I hear you. From a different perspective, this is the time of year where, you go near the high school and the fields just smell like the fall, and you're getting prepared to sit there and watch a football game or a soccer game or, whatever it happens to be at the time. It's tremendously disappointing for our students who look so forward to that. I wish that I had a good answer for you, but unfortunately I don't. And but I can tell you this, that if your child is not feeling super great about the situation, or if he needs someone to talk to, please reach out to Mr. Ballard or Mrs. Wolstenholme, so they can help. Again, sometimes it's just someone else lending an ear, to help someone through it. Again, I wish I had a better answer for you, because not only do our kids want to participate and play, boy, we want to be out there cheering them on as well. So it is just terribly unfortunate, the whole thing. And just can't wait till this is over with, so our kids can just be kids. No one gets into this profession to teach like this. It's just an unfortunate situation that will pass, but it stinks as we're trying to go through it. I can't imagine being a school-aged kid during this time, because it's confusing. They know that this COVID thing is a bad thing, but yet, kids seem to fare better than most through it, but yet it is still a scary thing. I was just reading something today on the inflammatory disorder that, you know, some of these younger kids are experiencing well after the fact, well after receiving negative COVID-19 testing results. And it's all scary stuff. So again, just can't wait till we can be as normal and not, you know, be worrying about this thing or bringing it home to our families or anything like that. So.
Well, it seems like we've answered all the questions, or you've answered all the questions, Mr. Brindley.
Well, you know, again, you know, it's 7:41, so I can't thank you all enough for spending an hour and 40 minutes with us. You know, I wish, again, we wouldn't be in this environment if none of this was happening. So certainly wish that this was a different conversation that we're having, but as always, we appreciate your support and understanding. I say it all the time, how fortunate we are to live and work in this community. You know, the school district, our families, our students, it is a great place. And, you know, I wish you all the very best, and please do not hesitate to reach out. I know in many of my letters to you, I've put my email, I put the office phone here. I've even included my cell number for you. Please don't hesitate if you have a concern or a question. And, you know, please take care of yourselves and your families. And we certainly wish you all the very best, and certainly thank our panelists for being here again this evening. So, you know, just thank you all very much.
Okay. Good night.
All right.
Good night. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Colleen.
Thank you.